All right, Luke 18. And he spoke this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous, and despised others. And I'm constantly asking myself the question, am I comparing myself to other Christians? When other Christians tell me about their problems or what they're going through, do I sit there and say, man, sure, I'm glad I don't battle with that? How often do we say that? You know, and I know it's easy, and I'm completely against drugs, completely against drug addiction. But I heard, I've heard that there was something that went on here in town, and I'm sitting there thinking, because I heard several people talking about it, and my first thought was, ooh, gosh, I'm glad that wasn't me. Ooh. Man, it was like, wait a minute. They despised others. 2 men went up to the temple to pray. Here's the story, parable. One a Pharisee, the other a publican. Kind of a tax collector. It's bad. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself. Isn't that interesting that it says that? He says he prayed with himself. God, I thank you that I am not as other men are. Extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all that I possess. But the publican, standing afar off, would not lift up so much as his eyes unto heaven, but beat upon his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, Jesus says, this man went down to the house justified rather than the other. For everyone that exalts himself shall be abased, and he that humbles himself shall be exalted. Powerful, and it's convicting. And I think what it's telling us is that very day when Christ reached into our hearts by his mercy and opened our eyes to see the beauty and glory of the cross and the power of his risen life, that very day when he created faith in you, David said, create in me a clean heart. When he blotted out our transgressions as far as the east is from the west, that very day is when God had mercy on us sinners. And he opened up our eyes to see that we are just like them. We're just like the rest of them. Paul and Barnabas, we have the same lusts that you have. That's in Acts. We're just like you. Pagan Gentiles, worshiping other gods, struggling with lust of the flesh, whether it's lust toward a woman, lust toward a man, lust toward a beast, I don't care what lust it is. Lust toward greed, lust for cars and houses and great jobs and lots of money. Paul said, we struggle with the same stuff, guys. Don't worship us. The only real difference is this. We've been forgiven. By God's grace, we have been forgiven of all of our sins. So we finish Matthew 23. Back to the Pharisees. But within, you are full of hypocrisy. Here are these guys, man. Everybody looked at them, and they did. They stood on the street corners, and they prayed for a long time. And they were comparing themselves. And as James seems to indicate, which we're going to get to, they took the chief seats in the synagogue, and the people who were the sinners, they sat in the back. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see all the people that have been really struggling with their Christianity and just really having a hard time and feeling ashamed to come back to church, feeling like, man, sorry I spit, but feeling like they just can't come to church. They feel ashamed because, man, am I going to be judged? And are they going to come at me? And are they going to compare themselves with me? I'd like for all those people, I'd like for all of us to just go out and find whoever they are and say, hey, come on, and let's all sit in the front row together. Let's all sit in the front row. Front row. I mean, just get in the front row. Because what the Pharisees did was they said, you guys stay in the back. You struggle too much. Good night. If that were the case, I'd be back in my office. He says, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you build the tombs of the prophets. Well, what did we just see? We just got done with this huge section of the Prophecies of Mercy where these prophets were sitting there going like this to the righteous. And this is harsh. Now you understand why these guys killed the prophets. Here's why they killed the prophets. You go back there and look at the prophets and hear all these guys that are righteous, right? Totally righteous. And God says, man, yeah, you're doing all the sacrifices. You're doing all the new moons and the Sabbaths and the solemn days. And he tells the prophets to tell them. What a bummer. I mean, you can imagine being Isaiah. You want me to tell them what? God says, tell them they're sacrificing a dog is like they cut off, or sacrificing an ox is like they cut off a dog's neck. Tell them that all of their oblations and their burnt offerings, it's as if they ate swine's flesh. Tell them it's as if they're eating mice. Tell them that they are sodomites. Yeah, here these guys are going, homos, die. You know what I mean? And God says, go tell those people they're sodomites and they're Gomorrahites. That's what he says. You look at it. I kid you not, read Isaiah chapter 1. God says, man, I've had it up to here. He says, I'm full of it. That's exactly what he says. If you look at the Hebrew, he's saying, I'm full of it. I am full of all of your fattened oxes and fattened rams and your sacrifices. He says, you guys are Sodom and you're Gomorrah. Well, naturally, they're going, wait a minute. I'm very anti-homo. I'm very anti-gay. And I've obeyed the law perfectly. And so no wonder they sawed Isaiah in two.